Hi, now we're going to start graphing with Google Sheets. So the best way to do this is to have the data in front of you, and you can see that I have the data here so that we can look through it as necessary. And I'm also going to open up a fresh Google Sheet in my science or biology folder, whichever you have. So that's what I'm going to do first. I will go to New and create a new Google Sheet. And if it asks you to share, you can go ahead and click yes or OK to share. And then I'll want to make sure that I give my spreadsheet a title like we've talked about with your Google Docs. And so I can just title this graphing activity. And what I would want to do is make sure I include my name so that my teacher knew who I was. So I'm including my name because that's my last name, but please include your last name instead of mine, if that makes sense. All right, so on the first sheet, you can see this says sheet 1 down here at the bottom. I'm going to put my first set of data. And so if I look back at the data, I can see that I'm going to create a bar graph, right? That's what it says right here, bar graph. And it's going to be a bar graph about a mouse going through a maze through different colored light sources and how long it took them to do that. So the first thing I want to determine is, okay, which is the independent variable and which is the dependent variable. So what that means is, which one depends on the other? So does the light color depend on how fast the mouse goes through the maze, or does how fast the mouse goes through the maze depend on the light color? And so if you phrase it that way, you can kind of decide which one of those makes the most sense. And so what you should have decided in this case is that the time depends on the color of light. Okay? And so if it depends on that, it is the dependent variable. Right? So the color is the thing that I'm changing, and the time changes as a result of it. So for the light color, that's what I'm going to put in cell A1. So the one that's highlighted right here right now is cell A1. Okay, so in cell A1, I'm going to write light color. Okay, and the thing that's going to be the dependent variable, what depends on the light color, is going to be the time, and that was in minutes or seconds, excuse me. Okay, and I'm going to put all of the information below that was already on the graphing activity. So you can see the colors were green, blue, red, yellow. Pink, violet, and brown. And if you're not as fast as me at typing, you can always pause the video at any point, type in your data, and then play the video again. So the next is going to be just typing in the seconds, right? 24, 30, 36. (26, 37, 33). And 16. All right, now I have all my data ready. So I need to create the graph using Google Sheets with just this information. So I'm going to highlight. All I did was I clicked on that first box, and then I'm going to drag it to where there's the information ends. Okay. And then I'm going to click on this chart icon. It says Insert Chart. It's up here on the toolbar. Go ahead and click on that. And it'll start making one for you. And in this case, it happened to make a bar graph for me. Sometimes it doesn't do that. Okay, so you can see it's almost the way we want it to be. The chart type that's selected is correct. So now just go to Customization right here at the top. And I'm going to give it a different name because time in seconds versus light color isn't really a title that tells me anything about the graph. So if you look back, we actually saw what the graph was about. It was about a mouse traveling through a maze with different color light sources. And so I want to tell a little bit about the data just through the title, right? So this could be how fast a mouse travels through a maze in different colored light sources. Now I'd probably want to make some of those letters capitalized to make it proper, but just to give you an idea of what that would look like, I just wanted to give you an option. And then I'd also want to go back probably and title it graph 1, because that was what was originally in the graphing activity. If you see, it said graphing activity number 1. Okay, and then the legend is actually this thing on the right side of the graph here. Okay, and I don't really need a legend though, because there's only one series of data, right? There's no other data other than time. So I can get rid of that legend. So I'll click on the scroll bar and click none. And then you can see that it disappears. And then I can scroll down to see if I need to change anything else. Do I need to change what the x-axis is titled, which is the independent variable? It does not appear that I need to, right? Because that's the color of light. And then on the y-axis, which is where I would change under axis to left vertical, it says time in seconds. And it doesn't appear that I need to change that either. Okay. And scrolling down, everything seems about right. So that was probably one of the easiest graphs to create. So let's double check that we have everything good. We're all good here. So now I'm going to finally click insert. And now I have my graph, right, created. I can drag it. And maybe I made a mistake. What if I forgot to put in the title of my graph? Or maybe I forgot to put in the X or Y axis. If I forgot anything, I can always click on this little arrow drop-down menu here and say Advanced Edit. And when I do that, everything's going to pop up again that I originally saw. So that makes it very simple for me. And so maybe if I need to update, I can, or I can just cancel. Okay. So everything seems about right here, and that's when I would move on to my second data. So my second set of data here is graphing activity number 2. 2 different water plant species are grown, and I'm going to create a line graph this time. And you can see there's 3 sets of data here. And now I need to determine again which one is the independent variable. Which one depends on the other? Does the depth depend on the number of bubbles, or does the number of bubbles per minute by each plant depend on the depth? And so the number of bubbles is going to depend on the depth. Okay, and you're going to have to determine this for your last one. I'm not going to be able to help you with the last one, but all I want to do is I'm going to graph this data the exact same way that I did the others. So in order to create a new sheet, which is what you want to do, because I don't want to confuse my data, I'm going to click on this plus button in the lower left hand corner. And when I click that plus button, it's going to add another sheet. And you can see there's no data anymore. I can click back to sheet 1 and it's still there. And I can even rename sheet 1 if I wanted to. But here's sheet 2. And I'm going to type in depth in meters. Oops. And this is where it's going to get a little different, so I want to make sure you understand how this works. So because I have 2 different sets of data for one plant and then the second plant, I can't type in number of bubbles per minute. So instead here I'm going to type in plant A, and then I'll type in plant B. And then below that is where I'll type in the data for each one. Now I've already done that on another graph, so I'm just going to copy and paste it over, but all you would do is type in your data below that. Okay? So don't mind me. So here's the data, and I'm going to do the same thing after it's typed in. I'm going to highlight all of it, and then I'm going to click the chart tool again. Now remember, this is a line graph that we want to see. That's what the instructions told us to do. And what you can see here is that it did not create a line graph for me. That's okay. I'm going to go to chart types, and I'm going to want to choose the line one, and I can always see what it looks like before I start. So that's really cool that I can see what things will look like so that I have an idea of where I'm going. So if you look at the example, it already has the depth listed, but it doesn't have a y-axis label. But that's okay because I can fix that in customization. So I can give it an appropriate title here. That's where I would title it. I'm going to let you do that though. You want to keep the legend this time because I want to know which one's plant A and which one is plant B, right? The red one is telling us that it's plant B, and the blue is telling us that it's plant A. So if I scroll down, we saw that the axis that's horizontal, that's the x-axis, is depth in meters, which is correct, but I need to name the left vertical. The left vertical means this side, the left side of the y-axis, okay? And so that is going to be the number of bubbles per minute. So if you look back at the graphing activity, that's exactly what it says. It says number of bubbles of per minute, and that's for each plant, which is going to give us something a little different. Okay, and I don't need to do anything else. So at this point, I can click insert, but remember, I need to change my title. That's your job. I'm not going to give you all the answers. Change your title before you do that, right? That's the very top. I would just retitle it. And remember, it would be called Graph 2, and then give it an appropriate title of what it's telling me. Then I would click insert. And you can see that the graph is there. Now, some more information about this is in this drop-down menu. If I made a mistake, I can delete the chart. I could also save it if I wanted to. Save it as an image so I could embed it. That means put it into a Google Doc if I wanted to. I could also move it to its own sheet. What that means is it'll move it into its own huge picture that fits on a whole Google Sheet. That's not always necessary, but you can if you want. Okay. So there's graph 2. And now if I need to create graph 3, add one more sheet, and then I'll put the data for graph 3 on there. So this one is about diabetes. I'm going to give you a hint on this one. Okay. You're going to want to start typing just like this is written. Okay. Do not, okay, it is probably not going to be advisable to type in this top information. So looking back at my data,